So it seems like the company OpenRouter, which routes different requests to different models, is in talks with Stripe to be bought for $10 billion. And this morning, I created my own router skill, which might not be worth $10 billion, but certainly seems to be saving me a whole lot of money and resources in terms of token usage. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lanes running at the moment. To be fair, this one, and this one I've just compacted them and I haven't kicked them off again. So that means 6 at the moment. But this morning I started about 4 a.m. and it's now 11:15. So I've been going about 6 hours and 45 minutes. And I haven't got really angry or frustrated once. And like a back of the envelope way that I measure how well the system is working is how often I start banging my head against a Claude or Codex shaped wall. And this morning, even though I'm doing actually way more than I have in the past, I mean, before my maximum number of lanes, isn't a really good measure, but the maximum number of things I could be doing at once was probably like 4 different Claude code lanes. And now, earlier on this morning, all of these were going, and now actually there was another one. So that was like 10 different lanes. And it was all going remarkably smooth. And I think it's partially down, it's a number of different things, which I'll run through now, but it's partially down to this router that I've just finally actually built. It's just a simple skill, to be honest. But what I did was, so let me back up a bit. How I, at the moment anyway, tend to run things is I use Fable or Opus as the orchestrator in Claude Code. And I use the Codex plugin in Claude Code, which Fable and Opus routes a lot of the work to, a lot of the execution work. So I'm in, each of these terminals is essentially like an orchestrator, and each of the terminals that I'm talking to pushes the work to various different models in Codex, and also it can push it to Opus or Sonnet in Claude Code. And about a week ago, I got this Fable lane over here to do a job which was essentially simplifying my system. Did a massive sweep of my entire, I've got various different repositories, but the whole system, the build machine stack, which are all my canvases, and the my system, which is my AI system, the system that runs the system, if you like, to see what was craft, what was like no longer being used, stuff that was no longer important, maybe some words and names that the AI had started using that were starting to infect the system that I don't want, because this is something that's really, really important to understand. You've got to be really careful with the words and the names that you give things when you're working with AI and you're non-technical. Because what can happen is that if it names, and they're terrible at naming things, AIs. So if it names something either very generically or incorrectly or in a kind of confusing way, that word creates a sort of inference, and then that inference, well, number one, that word can kind of infect the whole system and creates a kind of gravity well, because remember, these machines are largely based upon statistical probability. So it creates an inference, oh, this means that. And then so it creates another kind of file with those inference in it. And the more of these words that keep kind of coming through, it creates this gravity well. And if it's the wrong thing, you start getting pulled in the wrong direction. So anyway, about a week ago, I set this lane running, and it did this massive review, Fable review, sent out agents to do it, and essentially came up with a plan of action of how to simplify the system, remove stuff that was no longer being used, sort it all out and everything. At the same time, though, I said, I want you to use every agent available to you possible. So at the moment, I've got the codecs plugin and all the codecs models, and obviously the ones in Claude Code. Now, I am going to start using local models and one open source ones up on Fireworks as well, but I'm just starting here. You've got to narrow your options in this situation. So I'm just using what I've got. And I asked Fable to make a file reporting, while it was doing this, reporting on the quality of the work of all the different models that it had access to. And just this morning, I got that file, I had a look through, and in a new lane, a new Fable lane, I said, take a look at this file and come up with a kind of a system process which the orchestrator lane can use to route different jobs. But crucially, give, in that, it was actually a skill called router. My router is what I call it. So crucially, give the why. Why do you want to use Terra like this? Codex Terra like this. Why do you want to use Opus in these situations? So it created that skill so that the orchestrator can now intelligently route with the whys, intelligently route the right job to the right agent. And the reason the why is so important, telling it why, is that a brittle rule, always use Sol for this, never use Terra for that. It's very brittle because every situation is nuanced and dependent on what is going on. And with Fable, and to a slightly lesser extent, but still, with Opus, they are intelligent enough to be able to, as long as they know why it's being suggested that this kind of job goes to that agent. And because they're in the actual job, they can actually modify how they orchestrate as long as they know why. The more intelligent these models get, the less just these very hard and brittle rules work. Now, when I start off an orchestration lane, the model automatically, that lane, the orchestrator, either Fable or Opus, knows what kind of things to give what kind of models, which is absolutely wonderful. Now, the other thing that it does as well is the way that I save token usage a lot is through very, very careful creation and reading of context. I won't go into the whole thing now, but essentially, I've got here in my status line a context monitor, how big the current context window, how full it is. So this one is up to 36% at the moment, which means it really does need, in fact, I'm going to do it right now, in fact. Let me just check that. Let me just pause it to make sure I can do this. Yes, I can actually do this now. So what I do is I do my next, and I think I'm going to select Sonnet as the model to do some of the processing. So that's a my next, and what it does is it assembles all of the files. It makes sure that none of them are stale. It runs a process which updates various different things in the system. Got a memory thing called the active time stream, the ATS, which it updates as well. And then it gives you a compact message, which you paste in after a compact, which allows the compacting thing, the compacting model, to actually compact correctly. And then at the start, after the compact, you simply tell the next, the post-compact lane, read the files, and let's continue. I've found this works absolutely brilliantly in order to keep things, on track. So I can just run these lanes over and over again. As I said, this particular lane I've been running for about a week with just successive compactions and using this my next skill. With the router, I'm never quite sure whether to use Fable or Opus as the orchestrator. Obviously, I don't want to use Fable all the time because it's so expensive. But the trouble is with Opus 5, is it can be very... Well, it just assumes a lot. It thinks it knows what's important. It stops too early, and it infers so much it doesn't actually go and read things. It's quite lazy. So I prefer to use Fable, but I'm trying to cut down on my Fable usage. I just keep on, it's too expensive. So what this router skill also does is it's injected in at my next, because one of the things about skills is you can use skills within skills. So at my next, I've added this router skill in, and what it does is it gives me a recommendation of what orchestration model to use for the next boundary, after the next boundary. I think there's one right. I think there's one actually here. Let me just pause it again and see if I can find it. Yes, here we go. So you can see this one says, Mike, this work would be better done with Fable. That is the router doing its work, telling me actually use Fable. Now you might say, well, why don't you just ask Opus? Why don't you ask the model? If you ask the model, actually asking number one, you'll forget. I think the other thing is, why isn't it just like a standing rule rather than being a skill that's triggered? The trouble is with a standing rule, because there are so many different rules, there are so many different instructions, it just ignores it. So actually, if you've got something that's really important, actually having a skill which triggers that kind of judgment is much better. It can't be ignored. Well, I mean, it can be, but it's much less likely to be ignored than just a rule that's always there. These LLMs, just like human beings, can kind of kid themselves into thinking all kinds of different things, and you never know what they're going to do. So essentially, what I found this morning after working with the system, I mean, remember, this lane over here has been, for a week, actually improving the system, making it work better, removing kind of things that are confusing and all that kind of stuff. So that's definitely having an impact. But also, this router skill, I think, has made a huge difference on how smoothly and how well the system is improving. I mean, I've noticed this over and over again with building. What ends up happening is it's a little bit like going up a mountain or something. So you build the system and you start doing things, and when you're doing things, you're successively doing harder and harder things until you reach it's almost like it gets too complicated or gets too difficult. You're pushing beyond the difficulty level that the system can take. So then you've got to kind of design the system to create more space. It's a little bit of a Jevons paradox. So then you design the system so that it can do even more complicated things. So now you've got more space. So that's the point at which it suddenly feels like you've reached it's no longer such a struggle, and you've reached more of a plateau or like a downward, it's more plain sailing. So then you start doing even more difficult things, which again then push you beyond the boundary of the current system. So then you have to build the system out to be able to do that. So it's like this kind of constant, you're really, really struggling to get up a hill, and then it becomes easier. And then you push beyond it, and you're really, really struggling to get up beyond that, up that hill again. And I think that might be something to do with it as well. But, I think over the next few years, one of the most important things that we can do as builders is think about actually intelligently spending our resources. Or it's more like investing our tokens, investing our resources rather than spending them. That's why so many of the lanes that I am in, the sessions that I'm working in, are really about building things to save my future AI usage, because that's like got a multiplier effect. And this router skill that I've just built, and which is working wonderfully at the moment, is just one of the ways in which I'm doing that. So if you want to hear about some more of the ways that you can and that I am saving tokens, I mean, there's absolutely loads of them, please subscribe to this channel and I'll tell you about them soon. So until then, onwards and upwards.